You ever walk into a room, say nothing and still shift the whole atmosphere? Not because you tried, not because you forced it, but because your presence carried something different, something calm, something grounded, something they couldn't understand. See, people don't always hate you because you did something wrong. Sometimes they hate you because you did something right. You found peace. They don't hate your clothes. They don't hate your smile. They don't even hate your success. They hate your stillness, that unbothered look in your eyes, that silence in your soul, that calm in your spirit, that I've made peace with myself energy that you don't even have to announce. It's not arrogance. It's not ego. It's peace. And peace is powerful. Let's get something straight. Your peace doesn't just exist. It reveals everything in the room that is broken, chaotic, and still pretending to be whole. See, when you walk in with that unbothered spirit, with your mind centered and your emotions anchored, you don't even have to speak. Your presence alone says, I am not available for your chaos. And that's when the discomfort begins, not in you, but in them. Because people who have not dealt with their pain will always be unsettled around someone who has. They look at your calm, and deep down they feel convicted. It reminds them of what they haven't done, the healing they've delayed, of the forgiveness they've refused. Your peace exposes their war, and they can't stand the reflection. You didn't try to hurt them. You didn't say anything slick. You simply stood in your stillness, and that was too much. They don't want to see you free, because your freedom reminds them that they're still in chains. Chains of resentment, chains of drama, chains of insecurity. And every time you show up with peace in your spirit, you shine a light on the prison they've made comfortable. You break the illusion that busy is successful, that angry is powerful, and that noisy is confident, because your peace proves otherwise. So what do? They poke at you, they prod you, they gossip, lie, and twist. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right, you're whole. And people who are committed to pain aren't ready for what wholeness looks like. It offends them. It irritates the spirit that has become addicted to dysfunction. They've lived in survival mode so long, they forgot what real living looks like. And here you come, smiling, steady, focused, unbothered, living. And I know sometimes you wonder why they treat you that way. Why the same people you loved, helped, prayed for, or supported seem uncomfortable when you're simply at peace. Here's why. Because when someone is drowning in their own emotions, they resent the one who learned how to swim. They hate that you didn't stay stuck, that you didn't carry the same bitterness, that you chose to rise when it would have been easier to sink. But let me remind you, that's not your burden. You are not responsible for their healing. You are not the solution to their storm. You are the evidence that peace is possible. And whether they embrace that or reject it, that's on them. Keep showing up with grace. Keep walking in stillness. Let your silence speak. Let your calm be your strength. Because the ones who can't stand your peace are only reacting to the truth it reveals in themselves. And that truth, it's not your enemy. It's your protection. Because anyone who is offended by your peace was never safe for your growth. You ever notice how some people only liked you when you were anxious? When you were over-explaining yourself? When you were walking on eggshells? Constantly checking to make sure they were okay, even while you were falling apart. But the moment you got quiet, calm, confident in who you are, decided you didn't need to play emotional tug-of-war anymore. They changed. The temperature shifted. Their smile faded. Their words got colder. That's not a coincidence. That's a revelation. Your peace took away their power. See, when you were emotionally reactive, they could control you. They knew what to say to push your buttons. They knew how to trigger your guilt, stir up your fear, or manipulate your response. But now you've unplugged the buttons. You've grown. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped fighting battles that drained your energy and proved nothing. You started responding with silence, with discernment, with wisdom, and they don't know what to do with that. They're used to people who argue, beg or break under pressure. But you walk away now. You pause, you pray, you protect your energy, and that confuses the ones who fed off your reactions. Because peace is not passive. It's not weak. Peace is discipline. Peace is strength. in restraint. It's choosing not to fight battles you've already won. It's knowing that everything doesn't deserve a response, that every attack doesn't require defense. Let me tell you something. They can't stand that you've become unreachable, emotionally unavailable to nonsense, spiritually locked in, mentally protected, and this threatens them. Because control thrives in confusion. It survives in chaos. When you were tangled up in their drama, they had access, but your peace built a wall they can't climb, and now they're on the outside watching you breathe differently. And it's not that you don't care, it's that you care too much to be consumed. You care about your mind, your growth, your calling, your assignment. You've got too much purpose to keep entertaining pettiness. So when they come at you with the same old tactics, trying to pull you back into the old version of you, what they find is silence, grace, maturity. And that silence, that stillness, that's power they can't manipulate. They want you to fight, to flinch, to explain, but you give them none of that now, and it eats at them. Because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the most powerful one. Sometimes the one who speaks the least is the one with the most control. And now, that's you. Don't you ever apologize for your peace. Don't shrink it to make others comfortable. Don't trade it for fake connections or shallow acceptance. You fought too hard to get here. You cried in rooms nobody saw. You healed in silence. And now that you found your center, protect it like gold. Because the ones who try to disturb, they were never for you. They just liked having power over the version of you that didn't know your worth. But now, you know. Some people don't want peace. Let's make that clear. They don't want harmony. They don't want understanding. They don't want healing. What they want is chaos. What they understand is conflict. Because to them drama is not just a distraction, it's their identity. They've confused noise for connection, confused arguing for love, confused dysfunction for normal. So when you walk into their world with stillness in your spirit, with clarity in your eyes, and no appetite for confrontation, you disrupt their entire system. Your peace is not passive. It's a protest against everything they've normalized. You're not playing the game anymore. You're not biting the bait. You're not giving them the argument they're hoping for. And that makes you dangerous. Because when someone can no longer lure you into the cycle of emotional chaos they live in, they start to lose access to you. And trust me, they'll feel that loss. Because they fed off the arguments, off the back and forth, off the emotional roller coasters they designed. When you were confused, upset, hurt, or always trying to fix things, you were easier to manipulate, easier to direct, easier to control. But peace breaks that path. Peace says, I no longer need to attend every argument I'm invited to. Peace walks away without slamming the door. Peace doesn't need the last word. Peace just moves silently and with power. They can't stand it because your peace starves them. They crave reaction and you give them none. They want to fight and you give them silence. They want your energy, but you're too wise now to hand it over freely, and that makes them uncomfortable. See, when someone has lived in conflict for so long, your peace becomes unfamiliar, and anything unfamiliar is scary. You represent a version of life they've never known, one that doesn't involve toxicity, tension, or turmoil. And instead of choosing to rise, they choose to resist. But don't take it personal. This ain't about you. It's about the fact that you now operate in a frequency their spirit isn't aligned with. You're no longer entertaining negativity. You're no longer fighting battles just to prove a point. You're choosing healing over hostility. And because they won't do the work, your presence becomes a painful reminder that they could be better, but aren't willing to be. So what do? You stay grounded. You keep choosing peace. You keep rising. Because every time you choose stillness over shouting, maturity over mess, clarity over chaos, you're not just protecting your soul, you're exposing what's broken in theirs. That exposure will either inspire them or irritate them. But either way, it's not your burden to carry. You didn't come this far just to react the same way you used to. You didn't grow through all that pain just to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You've earned this peace through heartbreak, through betrayal, through silence and tears and nights when you thought you'd never feel whole again. And now that you've tasted peace, you don't go back to poison just because someone else is thirsty for conflict. Let them be loud, let them be messy, let them spin in circles, but you stand still, you stand firm, because you are the calm in the storm they created, and that terrifies them. Let's be honest, some people were perfectly fine until you They had no problem with you when you were stressed out, reacting to every little thing, trying to please everyone just to keep the peace. But the moment you chose real peace, not the fake kind, where you're quiet, but boiling inside, the moment you chose healing, solitude, boundaries, that's when they got uncomfortable. Not because you harmed them, not because you wronged them, but because your peace made them look at themselves. See, when you level up mentally and emotionally, you don't just elevate, you expose. You don't even mean to, but your transformation starts to shine a light on other people's stagnation. Suddenly your peace becomes a mirror, and they don't like what they see. Your silence makes them ask themselves why they can't sit alone with their own thoughts. Your joy makes them wonder why they're still bitter. Your growth makes them feel stuck, and instead of getting inspired, they get defensive. You used to be just like them, overthinking, overreacting, over-explaining, but now you pause, now you don't chase, now you choose your words carefully, you don't attend every argument, you don't get sucked into every storm, and they're watching you, wondering, how did they get there? But deep down, they already know it took sacrifice. It took confronting your demons. It took breaking cycles and losing people you thought you couldn't live without. But here's the truth. Not everyone is ready to pay the price for peace. Some people are still too addicted to distraction, too loyal to their wounds, too committed to the identity that was born out of trauma. So instead of healing, they pretend. Instead of changing, they blame. Instead of asking, how can I grow too, they ask, who do you think you are now? Your peace doesn't fit their narrative. They wanted to keep you in the box where they understood you, where you were predictable, reactive, easy to manipulate. But peace changed your shape. It made you move different, love different, speak different. Now your standards are higher. Your time is more valuable, and your presence is earned, not freely given. And that disrupts everything they thought they knew about you. Some will distance themselves because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Others will stay close just to try and poke holes in your progress. They'll call you fake, call you cold, say you switched up, but don't you dare shrink, because what they're really saying is, your peace reminds me of the peace I could have, but I haven't chosen yet. Keep walking. Keep healing. Keep protecting your energy, because the truth is, you weren't sent here to make everyone comfortable. You were sent here to grow, to evolve, to become the version of you that doesn't need validation to breathe. And if your peace causes someone to question their own lifestyle, that's not cruelty. That's conviction, and conviction is the first step toward transformation. So let them question it, let them wonder, let them talk, because while they're stuck in the same loops, you're walking in freedom. And that freedom, that peace, will keep making noise, even in your silence. They had a whole story about you, a script, a narrative they wrote when you were still learning who you were. They called you dramatic because you had emotions. They called you difficult because you had boundaries. They labeled you unstable because you spoke up when something didn't feel right. And for a while you believed it. You tried to tone yourself down. You apologized for how you felt. You tried to fit into a version of you that made other people feel safe. But then something happened. You found peace. And the moment you embraced peace, the moment you became still, not silent from fear, but silent from strength, you shattered that old narrative. Because peace doesn't just change how you move, it changes how people have to talk about you. See, as long as you were reactive, they had material. But when you stopped responding, stopped explaining, stopped letting them pull you into chaos, they lost control of the script. Now they don't know what to say, because the old you, that version's, you're no longer the person who used to argue over every lie, cry over every betrayal, or chase after those who never saw your worth. That version of you died in silence, and what rose in its place is someone they don't recognize, someone they can't define. That's why your peace is such a problem. It rewrites the story. It makes people face the truth that maybe they were wrong about you, that maybe you weren't unstable, you were overwhelmed, maybe you weren't dramatic, you were maybe you weren't too much. They just didn't know how to handle someone with depth. And now that you've got clarity, now that you've grown and you're no longer handing out access like candy, they're uncomfortable. Because they can't slander your name with the same confidence. Your peace doesn't match the lies they told. They said you'd fall apart without them, but you're glowing. They said you'd come running back, but you never looked over your shoulder. They said you were the problem, but now that you've left, they're still surrounded by drama, and you're not even in the picture. That's what peace does. It exposes what was always real. But here's the twist. Some of them would rather hold on to a false story than face the truth of your transformation. They'll keep talking like they know you, like they still have access to your emotions, like they can still explain you to other people. But every time you show up calm, composed, grounded, you flip the script again, without saying a word, without lifting a finger. Because peace doesn't argue, it proves. So let them whisper, let them speculate, let them keep trying to force you back into the character they create. But don't ever go back to being who you were just to make their version of the story make sense. You owe them no explanation. You owe them no performance. You owe yourself peace. And you earned it. Because peace doesn't just protect you, it reintroduces you, not as who they imagined, but as who you truly are. Your peace is not just a feeling. It's a fortress, and when you finally built that fortress brick by brick, out of every heartbreak, every betrayal, every lesson, you didn't just build something soft and calm, you built protection over your energy, over your joy, over your identity. And the truth is, some people can't stand that you've become unreachable, because before, they had access to you, emotional access, spiritual access. They knew how to throw you off. They knew how to trigger you. Say a few words, stir the pot, and there you were, defending yourself, explaining yourself, questioning your worth. But that version of you no longer lives here. Now there's a gate, now there's discernment, now there's peace, and they hate because what they really wanted to do was poison your purpose. They wanted to plant seeds of doubt in your mind, make you believe you weren't enough, twist your thoughts until you lost focus. But your peace is your filter. Now their words don't hit the same, their energy doesn't reach, their games don't even get a reaction, and that drives them mad. Because here's the thing about people who feed off your weakness. They need you to stay vulnerable in the worst way. They need you distracted. They need you to keep second-guessing your every move. Because if you ever stop and actually get still, if you ever start protecting what's inside you, they lose power. And now you see them for who they are. Now you know peace isn't passive, it's a decision. Every time you choose not to respond to negativity, that's every time you walk away instead of retaliate, that's power. And every time you choose inner stillness over outer approval, you're reminding yourself, this peace is my protection, and not everyone deserves to enter. You don't have time for poisonous conversation. You don't have room for toxic energy. You don't have space for people who only show up to stir confusion in your life. Because the more you value peace, the more you start to guard it. You start to realize that not everyone's energy belongs near your calling. Not everyone's voice deserves weight in your decisions, and not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. Your peace is how you block it. It's how you break the cycle. It's how you keep your spirit clean in a world full of noise. And yes, that will upset people. People who can no longer reach you. People who once fed off your emotional chaos and now don't know how to handle your emotional clarity. They will say you've changed. They will say you've shut down. But what really happened, you woke up, you healed, and you chose to protect what they tried to poison. And that right there, that's wisdom. So don't apologize for having boundaries. Don't feel guilty for protecting your peace. You didn't fight all those inner battles just to open the door to the same energy that once broke you. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've gone distant. Because while they're stuck in cycles, you're walking in freedom. And freedom, my friend, is always worth protecting. There was a time when you thought the only way to be heard was to be loud. When you thought you had to defend yourself every time someone lied on your name. When you thought strength looked like standing in the middle of the fire throwing back every stone that was thrown at you. But now you've learned the truth. Real power isn't always loud. Real power is peace. And peace knows when to be still. You're not proving anything anymore. You're not defending what doesn't need defending. You're not wasting energy explaining your soul to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's growth. That's clarity. You've realized that the loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest. Sometimes it's the quiet one in the corner who doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, doesn't run, just watches, just listens, just waits, because they already know they've won. You see, people expected you to come undone. They expected you to react, to shout back, to fall apart, but you didn't. You held your peace. You let God handle what was out of your hands. And that choice, that inner stillness, that calm refusal to let the world break your spirit, that's what's driving them crazy.
because they were counting on your chaos, and instead, you gave them your composure, and now you're living proof that you don't need to fight to win. You don't need to argue to be right. You don't need to retaliate to get justice. Some battles are won in silence. Some victories are sealed in restraint. The old you would have fought everyone, but the new you, the healed you know better now. You know peace is the ultimate power play. They can't get a rise out of you anymore. They can't bait you into react, because you're not reacting. You're responding, and even your responses have become quiet, measured, thoughtful, and that's something they can't handle, because their power only worked when you played the game. But now you've left the arena altogether. They'll say you've gone cold, that you've changed, that you're distant, but don't get it twisted. You didn't shut down. You woke up. You stopped overexerting yourself, trying to keep people who never valued your peace. You stopped arguing in rooms you didn't belong in. You stopped chasing closure from people who were never honest to begin with. And in that silence, in that space of stillness, you discovered something unshakable. You discovered yourself. So don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing peace, for walking away from dysfunction, for saying less and praying more, for no longer needing applause to feel worthy. You found your lane, you found your rhythm, and now every move you make is intentional. Every word you speak is laced with power, and every step you take, it's taking you further and further away from the version of you that used to confuse noise for strength, because now you know the real ones don't need to shout to win. They don't need to scream to be powerful. All they need is peace, and you, my friend, are living proof. So now it's not your smile they can't stand. It's not your success. It's not even your silence. It's your peace. Your peace unsettles demons. It silences chaos. It disrupts dysfunction. It exposes every room, every spirit, every relationship that was only ever built on control. And now that you don't flinch, now that you don't fold, now that you don't give them what they're fishing for, you've become dangerous. Not because you raised your voice, but because you didn't need to. Not because you fought back, but because you rose above. Your peace became your posture. Your stillness became your strategy. And your silence, it spoke louder than anything they've ever shouted at you. Let them talk. Let them twist it. Let them fumble trying to find the old you. Because that version of you, the one they had access to, the one they could shake, trigger, manipulate, that version is gone, buried, replaced with someone who walks in alignment, in purpose, in power. You don't owe chaos a conversation. You don't owe confusion a response. You don't owe anyone an apology for choosing peace over performance. Because the truth is, you fought too hard to get here, through every storm, through every betrayal, through every silent night, when no one clapped for your growth, when no one saw the battles you were fighting inside, but you made it. And now you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. It's your crown, it's your weapon, it's your reward. And those who can't handle it were never meant to sit with you in the first place. So keep your head high, keep your spirit still. And when they ask why you're so quiet, why you've changed, why you don't react anymore, tell them this. Because peace is louder than any noise they'll ever make. And I finally learned, I don't need to shout to be strong. I just need to be still and let God be God. Walk in that truth and never look back.